America's Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor, you're Mr. Fauci in my few minutes. No, I don't need your answer. I want to talk about this right here.
Mr. Chairman,
Fauci,
objection.
I reclaim my time.
Objection.
I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time, Mr. Raskin.
Gentlelady will suspend.
Mr. Chairman, of order. Just in terms of the rules of decorum, are we allowed to deny that a doctor is a doctor just because we don't want him to be a doctor?
Yes, because in my time, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in
Gentlelady
prison.
will suspend. And the gentlelady should recognize the doctor as a doctor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, is this what we have become? Is this what we have devolved into?
Dr. Fauci, I want to join my colleague from Florida in apologizing to you that some of our colleagues in the United States House of Representatives seem to want to drag your name through the mud. They're treating you, Dr. Fauci, like a convicted felon. Actually, you probably wish they were treating you like a convicted felon. They treat convicted felons with love and admiration. Some of them blindly worship convicted felons. Is there anything else you would like to say to the American people about your service to America during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic?
My main job during the COVID pandemic was to play a role with my team at the Vaccine Research Center to develop a safe and effective vaccine. And we did that in an unprecedented short period of time, never seen before in the annals of vaccinology. As we all know, that vaccine and those vaccines have resulted in saving of hundreds of thousands of lives in the United States and millions of lives throughout the world.
Another House oversight hearing means another opportunity for House Republicans, led by Marjorie Taylor Greene, the face of that party, to humiliate themselves in their interminable desperation to turn whatever they touch into a circus. Now, I don't want to bury the lead here, so I'll say this right at the top. The reason that the Republicans hate Dr. Fauci is because their leader, Donald Trump, utterly failed by responding to COVID. With 5% of the world's population, we had 20% of the world's cases and deaths, an unmitigated disaster of a response. However, lest you forget the cardinal rule of republicanism, it is never, under any circumstances, Donald Trump's fault. And so they needed a scapegoat, and they landed on Dr. Fauci. Why? Because they could launch nebulous attacks and conspiracy theories, and their base isn't discerning enough to know the difference, and it would accomplish their ultimate goal of deflecting the blame off of Trump. I mean, you've literally got members of Congress on the Republican side accusing Dr. Fauci of profiting off of the spread of a virus.
Dr. Fauci, how much have you earned from royalties from pharmaceutical companies since the pandemic began in 2021?
Zero.
It says NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers. you're saying that you did not receive any of the $710 million.
On COVID, I received, I think, $122 for a monoclonal antibody that I made 27 years ago.
Okay, so just in general, though, how much have you received, not related to COVID, just in general, how much have you received in royalties between 2021 and 2023?
I think none.
Okay, so somebody received the $710 million.
Somebody did, but not me.
You didn't receive any royalties. Okay.
I mean, I see no royalties associated with COVID. I mentioned.
I said.
No, I want to.
No, I just said.
I'm on the record, and I want to make sure that this is clear. That I've developed a monoclonal antibody about 25 years ago that's used as a diagnostic that has nothing to do with COVID, and I receive an average of about $120 a year from that patent.
Talk about deranged. This guy has dedicated his entire life to protecting people, and these Republicans are so high on their own supply of bullshit that they think one of the nation's premier immunologists, who served as an advisor to every U.S. president since Reagan, is somehow looking to get people sick and get rich off it himself. To say that these Republicans' brains are utterly broken would be generous. Also, not for nothing, but you gotta love how Nicole Malliotakis tried to land some gotcha and was just in way over her depth. A general rule for attorneys is that you don't ask questions you don't already know the answer to. Republicans would make pretty bad attorneys, which kind of explains why they lose so damn much in court. Jim Jordan also proved how in over his head he was by trying to outwit Dr. Fauci here.
Why was it so important the virus not have started in a lab?
Wasn't so important that the virus not. We don't know. We know
it was important to someone in the Biden administration, so much so that the top people at Meta, the top people at Facebook are asking, why are we getting all this pressure to downplay the lab leak theory? And we have an email from June of the same year, June 4th, 2021, saying the same thing. It was certainly important to somebody.
Well, what does that got to do with me?
I'm asking you because you're the expert on the coronavirus. I'm saying, why was the administration so pushing not to have the lab leak theory as something that was viable?
I can answer that. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
You kept an open mind. Dr. Fauci, open mind.
That is correct.
What happened in those 3 days? Why did Dr. Anderson and Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gary, why did they change their mind in 180 degrees? Because what Christian Anderson says 3 days later, after he said virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory, 3 days later he says the main crackpot theories going around at the moment relate to this virus being somehow engineered, and that is demonstrably false. How did they figure all that out in 3 days, Dr. Fauci?
You can do that.
Still have an open mind.
Well, what they did is that they testified before this committee. What they did, they went back and looked at the sequences and realized that their initial concern was unfounded about that, and it did not look at all like it was manufactured. But as they said in their paper, even though they feel it was more likely,
3 days they figured it out.
That's exactly. You could do that in 3 days. You can scan sequences in a day. You don't need 3 days.
Do you agree that there was a push to downplay the lab leak theory?
Not on my part.
Really?
Really?
Wow. I think most of the country would find that amazing. I still got 11 seconds.
But look at the facts. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
All right, I yield back.
Yeah, you gotta love Jim Jordan trying to get Dr. Fauci to explain Facebook's actions, as if Dr. Fauci works at Meta. I mean, my God, these people are so all over the place, are so steeped in their deep webs of conspiracy theories that when they actually say this stuff out loud, they betray how insane they actually are. But if you're looking for the one instance of Republican cognitive dissonance on full display, here's Marjorie Taylor Greene again doing exactly that.
You know that what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
So that we're clear, we've sat by for the last week listening to every Republican under the sun decry the politicized prosecutions against dear leader Donald Trump. How dare you seek to hold a politician accountable? It's the weaponization of government. And then, 5 minutes later, you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene quite literally calling for the prosecution of someone she perceives as her political opponent. Which is just so weird because we were just told how inappropriate it was for political prosecutions to move forward. I guess the rules only apply to Republicans, huh? And just as a quick aside, it really is telling that Greene views her political opponent as a scientist and a doctor. really does give the game away in terms of what green represents, doesn't it? And look, I'm not here to give advice to Marjorie Taylor Greene, but just as a general rule, when you're on the side opposing doctors and scientists, you're probably doing it wrong. So look, first of all, hearings like this are a joke in general, but they do provide one valuable service. They put on full display how absurd, how dangerous, how anti-science, how anti-common sense these Republicans actually are. Maybe, Republicans, it's not that the nation's premier immunologist was looking to spread a dangerous pathogen. Maybe it's quite simply that the idiot Republican president at the time pretended that the virus was a hoax, and then that it could be cured by injecting disinfectant, and his followers believed him, and that is why the US had such a failed response. That's not Dr. Fauci's fault, it's not Joe Biden's fault, it's not the Democrats' fault, that is Donald Trump's fault. And if these people weren't so hell-bent on protecting him at all costs, they might actually save themselves some embarrassment by admitting it.
It is Tuesday, the 4th of June of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash. A mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Try it. There's historical precedent to it because, as we all know, it always has, and it always will make a difference. It does. Alrighty, so what else is making a difference? Well, it looks like Hunter Biden's trial is going on, and apparently his crimes are so heinous that obviously, Joe is going to be damaged by it. 34 charges, felony charges. Indicted, prosecuted for 34 felony charges, and Hunter Biden paying his taxes late, and the gun charge? Well, what about that gun? There is a MAGA judge overseeing that trial. Just so we know and we're clear, because MAGAs all believe, since they're corrupt, that they've been stacked on the courts for a particular purpose of ideology that must be followed. They think that everybody else is doing the same thing that they're doing, except as the enemy. So in the MAGA mind, or shall we just say the conservative mindset, that has always been set in the mind of the conservative, maybe? Well, they think that everybody is doing what they're doing, only worse. So they have to be more. They have to get worser. They're so bad. I have to keep up. Oh, okay, great. And it's all a story they've made up in their heads. Now, we might have to agree at some point that maybe the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but it's not like we didn't warn people way back in the 70s and before. Earth Day didn't just start in 1970, please. We've been working up to it. I got to tell you, the spill in the Santa Barbara Channel is what pretty much got some politicos on board, and we got Earth Day within months to a year. Everybody forgets. And a lot of people just don't even know. Okay? So, this didn't just happen yesterday. We've been building up to it. And there's been some, I always hated using the term evil ascribed to people, because it just seems so superstitious, not rooted in rational thought. Certainly not scientific. Is there a quantifiable way in a blind study to, determine evil? On the other hand, if we wanted to adjudicate it in the jurist mindset, Didn't a jurist on the Supreme Court years and years and years ago talk about pornography and said, I know it when I see it? Same here. But we know evil when we see it, right? So it takes a pretty evil person to make money knowing that they're the cause of, a global catastrophe. These are the people who whine that we can't have laws preventing me from peeing in the stream. That's essentially what they considered political correctness. I have a right to pee in the stream. No, we're just trying to get you to be a good neighbor. You can't force me to be a good neighbor. Joe Biden forgave student loans, I guess. Quote, forgave student loans. Look, what were those student loans? They were brought about by a criminal gang. Please. These people raked in billions and they were a criminal gang. Like somebody getting their money stolen out on the street corner and you got to pay off your debt to that guy? And the role of government is to protect that guy and not the person who got taken by the crook? Give me a break. I'll give you a little personal history. Way back in the day, my parents got taken advantage by some crooks who had stolen a bunch of musical equipment from a warehouse. And it wasn't enough just to, sell or fence these wares off. They set up a business where they contracted with music stores, instrument and music stores around the Southland of Southern California. All over, not just the San Gabriel Valley. And in which they would, you would, I got to tell you, I had a Rickenbacker. I mean, come on. I'm a little kid. I got a Rickenbacker. Electric guitar. Jesus. Fender amp. So my parents set me up for music lessons in which these crooks had contracted these music stores to sell the equipment or essentially get payment in which you would pay them and then they would pay the music store stuff. So, and they came to your house. And in many instances, after a bit of time, then we were going to the music store. And the gang got busted. Did we get to keep the Rickenbacker? No, they took it. They being the cops, because it was stolen equipment. Music store owners were out money. Of course, then they, low man on the totem pole. So, the customer, the music store owner is going to sue my parents to pay for the remaining. So there was all of that rigmarole. And my parents weren't the only ones. And, I'm just saying that this was a far-flung group that did this all over Southern California. And we got caught up in it. So essentially, this student loan thing to me is a bunch of crooks of the conservative mindset are protecting the guys that jack the warehouse and then set up this nefarious business because free enterprise? Suckers are suckers, and so why would you want to protect a sucker? What the F is that all about? So Joe, quote, forgiving student loans is the equivalent of 34 indictments, felony indictments of essentially trying to steal the election with Russia help. Let's get down to brass tacks. That is what that was all about. All of the Hillary emails, the DNC purloined emails that made Wasserman Schultz quit. Let's not forget, Vlad also stole RNC bullshit, so he knows every single Republican who's taken NRA laundered Russian rubles, which isn't hard because it's every single Republican. Right down to dog catcher. Doubt my words? Just you wait. I've been batting 1,000 since the Paris Peace Accords, when we all said when we were kids, boy, doesn't it seem like Nixon and his group were in there mucking up the Paris Peace Accords? Yes, they were. Yep. And we heard that LBJ wasn't happy, and it took quite a while until he finally released the LBJ tapes, and he was not happy. Called it treason. Just like we said. So I'm just saying, I'm batting 1,000 since then. Iran-Contra? I even think I made a joke about, Oliver North's probably in the basement of the White House, and I was right on that. It was a joke. So don't mess with me. Mark my words. MAGA dog catcher. Or just regular Republican dog catcher. They've got some NRA laundered Russian rubles coming to them too. All right. When they talk about Soros-funded DAs, it's because their side has NRA laundered Russian rubles, and everybody knows it, and so does Vlad. And when it suits his purpose, those people will go to the rock pile too. All right. Everybody, it doesn't matter who colludes with them or not, everybody's going to the rock pile. And so my advice is that to keep from going to the rock pile, you don't let Vlad do the BS that he's doing. Come on. Wolverines, man. Jeez. You would think people have seen enough movies, even on cable, to know. You don't have to remember. We need to remind these kids. And when I say kids, I mean like in their 40s to maybe low 50s, who apparently don't know the most basic aspects of political life, like ALEC, the Koch brothers, the Petersons, the DeVosses. They know a lot about the Rothschilds, though. How is that? Jeez. Soros-funded Rothschild. Oh, yes. There's a Jewish cabal taking over the world. They know that. All right. I always took Umberto Eco's advice that whenever anybody started talking about the Templars, just turn around and walk away. You're not going to be able to convince that person of anything. So whenever somebody mentions like Soros-funded, Rothschilds, Templars, walk away. All right. Well, with that stated, why don't we walk right into this the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy and have you seated? Well, you already are, actually, figuratively, because Little Precious sat you a little while ago. Hopefully you're not standing. Come on, take a load off. We're going to give you what we have in store for you in the rest of this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, a confidential state document showed a long shot MAGA political stunt that Elise Stefanik was involved in, if not perpetrated, to personally interfere with the New York judge Erdogan, who founded Trump liable for bank fraud. Well, guess what? According to this confidential document, which actually is par for the course in New York courts, well, that case fizzled out quietly months ago. Mm-hmm. A panel of MAGA judges on the 11th Circuit blocked the Fearless Fund from awarding grants to black women because it might discriminate against white men. Yeah, they've been pulling that stunt all over, even here in Oregon. And when I say they, I mean the guy saying that we white men are the most discriminated race in the world. Yeah, we got that here. And the CFO of the far-right MAGA QAnon China-owned propaganda outlet Epoch Times. To be fair, the guys with the Galon Falun, that really weird religious cult. But trust me, they're also being manipulated by the Chinese government to be chaos agents no matter what. Well, the CFO of that brag has been arrested for his role in a $67 million multinational money laundering scheme. Wow. I guess maybe there's some Epoch Times laundered Chinese yen maybe passed around too. And Vlad knows. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the head of Greece's extreme neo-Nazi Golden Dawn party will return to prison after a council of judges rescinded his early conditional release. And that was reported here when they let him out, and that was an uproar. Oh, my God. And a small group of women got down on their knees outside Russia's defense ministry to hold a rare protest and demand the return of their mobilized soldier husbands and sons from Ukraine. It'll be Siberia for them, but it's a protest nonetheless. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Going to tuck right into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, by the way, and just a small reminder, we roast corn. Take it off the cob, put it in the chowder. And we have a special way of roasting that corn, too, and you know. And if you don't know, we'll remind you some other day. But we put corn in the chowder because that's how we do it here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Roasted corn. In the husk. I just can't stop talking about it. Anyway, Jose Pagliari of the Daily Beast brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A long-shot MAGA political stunt to personally interfere with the judge who ultimately found Donald Trump liable for bank fraud fizzled out quietly months ago, according to a state document marked confidential that was obtained by the Daily Beast. How did they obtain it? New York Supreme Court Justice Arthur F. Engoron, not Erdogan. What is this? Pretty soon Beowulf's going to be coming around. And his law clerk, Allison Greenfield, were cleared by a state commission of allegations of inappropriate bias and judicial intemperance. The decision appears to have surprised the Republican Congresswoman who filed the complaint. Asked yesterday, Monday, about his dismissal, staff for Representative Elise Stefanik. Or is it Stefanik? Elise Stefanik. Of course, the Republican from New York. Responded by demanding to know on what basis the Daily Beast could assert the complaint went nowhere. Stefanik's executive director, Alex DeGrassi, did not say whether the Congresswoman had received a copy of the decision. After the story was published, DeGrasse, or is it DeGrassi? Well, he's an ass, so we'll call him DeGrasse, told the Daily Beast in a statement, quote, New York's court system is partisan, corrupt, and rigged. Chairwoman Elise Stefanik and House Republicans will continue to expose the blatant illegal lawfare. and weaponization of governments and courts against President Trump. F you projecting asshole Nazi MAGA Nazi. Right. Every now and then, I like to take on the role of the guy at the end of the bar. But I got to tell you, I like to sit at the middle of the bar. I don't know. Get both sides going. I know that people sit at the end of the bar. That way everybody has to turn their head to them. What makes you think you can't do it in the middle of the bar too? Huh? During Trump's bank fraud trial last year, the former president employed allies to engage in bad faith attacks on Engoron and Greenfield. The most prominent was an ethics complaint filed by Stefanik in the state's Judicial Commission, describing serious concerns about inappropriate bias and judicial intemperance shown. They told Trump to sit down and shut up. Actually, it wasn't even the clerk who said it. She just read the order. Although nearly all such complaints are filed and processed in secret, Stefanik announced the accusation on X in November in what was largely seen as an attempt to get in Trump's good graces and elevate her profile with the presumptive Republican presidential nominee narrows down his list of candidates for vice president. Everybody thinks a dictator can do it alone. No, he needs help. Donald Trump thinks he can do it alone, though. That's why he's holding out. Americans are sick and tired of the blatant corruption by radical leftist judges in New York. Stefanik wrote, she wrote in an 1,800-word post. Also in an accent totally made up in the moment, as you know that we are wont to do. All New Yorkers must speak out against the dangerous weaponized lawfare against President Trump. There it is, that lawfare BS again. Lawfare. Only crooks think that the law used against them is like some sort of war. F you. Join America or get out. See, I told you I can do it in the middle of the bar. In her letter, Stefanik breathlessly claimed the judge illegally gagged Trump when, in fact, the judge merely barred the former president from launching unprecedented attacks against court staff. That resulted in bomb threats, death threats, and then they had to increase security. There's actually a list of all and tapes of Greenfield's phone being jammed up with death threats and any number of BS, anti-Semitic BS. I mean, come on. Stefanik also alleged that Engoron and his law clerk were partisan Democrat donors. $15 to the Biden campaign. Can you believe that? $15. Drawing attention to Greenfield's political spending, but conveniently ignoring the fact she was legitimately running for a local public office to become a judge herself. Which is, this is America. We vote. They hate voting. But Engoron and Greenfield got the last laugh. On March 14th, the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct chucked out Stefanik's accusation. The legal process typically takes place behind closed doors, but the Daily Beast acquired a copy of the decision. Maybe they were so pissed off by her going public on Musk's platform. They said, hey, you guys at the Daily Beast, you want to look at this? And they did. The commission dismissed the complaint, having found no basis on the facts presented to commence an investigation, wrote Robert H. Tembekian, the commission administrator and counsel. As a result, Trump won't have some of the ammunition he was hoping for as he seeks to appeal the $500 million judgment hanging over his real estate portfolio in New York and beyond. offering here in the Bistro Cafe comes from the newly magatized Washington Post, but it doesn't seem to have filtered down to this particular article in its totality yet. Newly magatized. I'm gonna copyright that. Just you wait. Julian Mark and Taylor Telford of the newly magatized Washington Post brings us this next offering. A panel on the U.S. Court of Appeals of the 11th Circuit, MAGA panel, ruled yesterday, Monday, that an Atlanta-based venture capital firm should be temporarily blocked from issuing grants reserved for businesses owned by black women, saying that doing so would probably discriminate against business owners of other races like white men, mostly because white men aren't getting loans and grants because white men are just so discriminated against. They never get any venture capital ever. If you look at Silicon Valley, what do you see? A sea of white. But apparently they're not getting enough. They want it all. Okay. The ruling comes after Fearless Fund, a VC firm dedicated to funding businesses founded by women of color. That's their mission statement. So much for free enterprise. Well, they were sued last August by a group led by affirmative action opponent Edward Blum, who's pulled this BS here in Oregon too. For specifically black women getting grants. Jesus. By private groups. Nonprofits. Can't do that. Well, Blum's cases against Harvard and the University of North Carolina culminated with the Supreme Court overturning race-conscious college admissions last summer, and they couldn't wait. They said, bring us a case, and Blum did. The Federal Appeals Court in Atlanta reversed a lower court decision that the fund could proceed with its grant contest amid the litigation. The case is being watched closely because of its possible implications for race-conscious programs in the private sector. Particularly the world of grant giving and foundations. Do you think Mackenzie's going to be able to give out all that money for women? No, they're going to prevent that. And also Melinda Gates, newly arrived on the scene. Well, let's see. Observers have identified the case as a central legal battle over civil rights and affirmative action, with support pouring in from groups on both sides of the issue. The newly magatized Washington Post couldn't avoid that. Both sides. This is the first court decision in the 150-plus year history of the post-Civil War civil rights law that has halted private, charitable support for any racial or ethnic group. Wow, the Free Labor Society back during slave times would make even more slaves. We can't have free slaves making stuff. We need to have slave labor making stuff. All right. The dissenting judge, the district court, and other courts have agreed with us that these types of claims should not prevail. And he did, too. Schwartz added that the Fearless Fund and his legal team are evaluating their options, Schwartz being the lawyer, and that this is not the final outcome of this case. The fund can appeal the decision to the full 11th Circuit or petition the U.S. Supreme Court for a review. If the fund doesn't appeal, the case would move back down to the trial court. Well, I would suggest let's go en banc. Bring the whole 11th Circuit. Associated Press bring us a pretty cut and dried offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy that will spice up just a little. The chief financial officer of the Epoch Times, a conservative multinational media company, is accused of taking part in a multi-year scheme to launder tens of millions of dollars in fraudulently obtained unemployment benefits and other funds, according to an indictment unsealed yesterday, Monday. Arrested on Sunday, Wei Dong, or Bill Gwan, age 61, of Secaucus, New Jersey, appeared on Monday yesterday before a federal judge in New York on charges of conspiring to commit money laundering and bank fraud. He pleaded not guilty, because they always do. Guan is accused of participating in a sprawling transnational scheme with others to launder at least $67 million to the New York-based media company's bank accounts and related entities. It's the related entities I want to know about. Federal prosecutors said members of the company's Make Money Online team, which was managed by Guan, used cryptocurrency to knowingly purchase tens of millions of dollars in crime proceeds. I would go after every MAGA repug pushing crypto. I would. And let's see. He used the cryptocurrency to knowingly purchase tens of millions of dollars in crime proceeds, including funds from fraudulently obtained unemployment benefits that were loaded onto prepaid debit cards, according to federal prosecutors. Stolen personal information was then used to open accounts as part of the alleged laundering scheme. The money was further laundered, prosecutors said, through other bank accounts held by Epoch and Guan's personal bank and cryptocurrency accounts. I wonder how many MAGA people are involved. And when I say people, I mean MAGA. Assistant Federal Defender Ariel Werner, listed in court records as Guan's attorney, declined to comment out at this time on the charges because they were just pressed into service. They don't know what the hell's going on. The Epoch Times was not named in the indictment that was released yesterday, but instead was referred to as a multinational company in a statement. The news organization, which is linked to China's Falun Gong spiritual movement, said it would cooperate with the federal probe. Prosecutors said the charges are not related to the media company's news-gathering activities. Federal prosecutors said the company's revenues jumped approximately 410% when the money laundering began, from approximately $15 million to $62 million. Guan, they said, lied to banks when they asked about the increase in transactions and said there was an increase in legitimate donations. The Epoch Times has become politically conservative over the years, always have, and has embraced former President Donald Trump and various conspiracy theories. No shit, Sherlock. Okay, well, I don't know if that's spicing it up, but it does bring us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
It's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Trump team hits apprentice film with cease and desist letter. I'm Bill Newman. This is the Civil Liberties Minute, and under that headline, this story. The docudrama The Apprentice, which just premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, depicts Trump during the 1970s and 80s. Trump's lawyer accused the filmmaker of creating a concoction of political lies that defame the former president and constitute election interference. Part of Trump's defamation claim involves the allegation that Trump sexually assaulted his first wife, Ivana, an allegation Trump has denied. Ivana Trump made that allegation, but later recanted it, saying she felt violated, but nothing criminal occurred. Some of Trump's legal hurdles? Movies are protected by the First Amendment, and statements about public figures are not libelous unless a falsehood is published with knowledge that it's false or with reckless disregard for whether it's true or not, what the law calls actual malice. That's an intentionally high standard established by the Supreme Court 60 years ago in a case where supporters of Martin Luther King placed an ad in the New York Times criticizing the Montgomery, Alabama police for their treatment of civil rights protesters. A free press depends on creators of content being free to report on the powerful without fear of lawsuits and bankruptcy. A lower standard would chill freedom of the press and constitute a threat to all of us. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. The Kansas Supreme Court issued a contentious, narrow decision Friday determining that Kansas citizens do not have a natural right to vote. Instead, the majority ruled that citizens have a political right, subject to qualification by its legislature. The legislature passed a spate of anti-voter bills in 2021, restricting voting by mail, who could assist voters in returning ballots, and how many ballots could be returned by get-out-the-vote groups. It also implemented notoriously inaccurate signature matching for mail-in ballots, but no provisions for voters to cure a mismatch. The rules could potentially disenfranchise thousands. Pro-democracy groups sued, arguing the rules infringed on the constitutional right of Kansans to vote. The court's majority ruled 4-3 that Kansas citizens do not have a natural right, only a political right under the Article 5 suffrage provisions of the state constitution. As such, the legislature can require, quote, proper proofs contemplated by Article 5, Section 4 may include any reasonable provision for ascertaining who is entitled to vote, that is, who is a qualified elector under Article 5. The signature matching and ballot delivery restrictions will stand, subject to a lower court review. Justice Eric Rosen wrote in his dissent, I cannot and will not condone this betrayal of our constitutional duty to safeguard the foundational rights of Kansans. Find links to the decision at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day the Detroit Free Press reported that a grand jury had been convened to investigate the severe beatings of 4 Briggs UAW Local 212 officers over the previous 15 months. Recording Secretary Ken Morris had been the latest victim. He was brutally beaten May 31st behind his home. Arthur Vega, leader of Local 212's Flying Squadron, was viciously attacked by thugs in March of 1945 and suffered a broken arm and other injuries. Next, Local 212 Sergeant-at-Arms Roy Snowden was clubbed on 2 separate occasions, suffering permanent injuries. Then, in October 1945, Janora Dollinger, heroine of the 1937 Flint sit-down strike and founder of the Women's Emergency Brigades, was beaten so severely as she lay sleeping that she was hospitalized in critical condition for weeks. Since her Flint years, Dollinger had become active with Local 212. She served as a leading member on the Union Committee established to investigate the earlier beatings. Both the local and the international led investigations into the beatings and offered sizable rewards. Union militants noted the beatings benefited the company to be sure. Briggs had fired all 4 victims at one point or another for Union activity. Strike preparations had been underway when Morris's wife found him with his head cracked open. The UAW waited for the grand jury's findings. By year's end, another Local 212 shop steward had also been beaten. By 1951, Union officials demanded a second grand jury investigation. They accused Briggs of awarding a lucrative scrap contract to a local mob boss, Carl Renda, in exchange for anti-union thuggery. No charges were ever brought against the company, which insisted the violence stemmed from intra-union disputes.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting temperatures a bit warmer than yesterday. Should be in the mid-80s, but more likely in the upper 80s here in the mothership. Mostly cloudy skies at the moment, and we will have partly cloudy skies throughout the day, with winds picking up out of the west-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour in only hours or less. Clear to partly cloudy overnight with lows in the upper 50s, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then sunshine and clouds mixed tomorrow with highs in the low 90s, maybe a tad warmer. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated very high here in our hamlet of Rogue River. The air quality index in the region is very good at 20 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at level 9. So even though it's cloudy, you better take care anyway. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.06 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 67%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. It is. Okay, looks like, London. The little weather station right near city center of London shows 65 degrees with showers in the vicinity. Paris is 76 degrees and partly cloudy. Rome is 80 and fair. Kabul is 69 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 68 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 65 and mostly cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 48 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 63, sunny with a small craft advisory on the bay and offshore. Chicago, Illinois is 78 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The head of Greece's extreme far-right Golden Dawn party, that's a nice way of saying they're neo-Nazis, because that's exactly what they are. Well, he's going to return to prison after a council of judges rescinded his early conditional release yesterday, Monday. Nikos Michaelioliakos was arrested in his Athens home following the decision and will be taken back to prison just over a month after his release. The Council of Judges ruled that Nikos, age 66, must serve the remainder of his 13-year sentence for running a criminal organization blamed for violent hate crimes. Last month, another Council of Judges accepted his request for early release after he had served the minimal legal requirement. The decision also took into consideration that he was aged over 65, which increases the time he is formally considered to have served. But yesterday's ruling, which followed an appeal by the prosecutor, found that Nikos had shown no repentance for the crimes he was convicted of and was capable of reoffending if at liberty. Sound familiar? Michaelioliakos and 5 other Golden Dawn lawmakers were convicted in October of 2020 of running a criminal organization and sentenced to 13 years in prison. Other party members received lesser sentences following a 5-year trial. Golden Dawn was founded as a Nazi-inspired group in the 80s and rose to become Greece's third largest political party during most of the country's 2010 to 2018 financial crisis. Its support later declined and the party failed to enter parliament post-crisis. The crackdown on the party followed the 2013 fatal stabbing of a left-wing musician in Athens, for which a Golden Dawn associate was given a life sentence. Working staff of the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A group of about 20 women got down on their knees outside Russia's defense ministry yesterday, Monday, to hold a rare protest and demand the return of their mobilized soldier husbands and sons from Ukraine. Groups of women, who are the relatives of men who were mobilized into the Russian army by Putin, have been holding small-scale protests for months. The women behind yesterday's protest asked for a meeting with Russia's new Minister of Defense, Andrei Belousov, to demand that the men be allowed to return home and that authorities impose limits on how long soldiers can serve before they can be granted leave. They are also demanding that mobilized men are replaced with contract soldiers who have agreed to fight. Russian authorities labeled the group on Friday as a foreign agent following several protests. The designation is a tactic used by Moscow to silence dissent. Moscow? You mean Vlad? Videos and photos shared on social media showed a group of women, some with school-aged children and children in strollers, kneeling outside the defense ministry holding banners. The child of one mobilized soldier was pictured wearing a T-shirt that read, "Bring back Dad." A woman who shared a live stream of the protest on social media said the protesters did not invite journalists because of the fears they would be detained. However, one of the videos she shared showed a policeman and police officers waiting by the defense ministry. She indicated the women later went home. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte goère. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.